Hello, I'm Vicky. A lot of you will already know who I am. I've been doing book vlogs since lockdown of 2020, starting with the World's Book Night video. This year, I thought I'll just try and cram in at least one more if I can. And what shall I do that on? And then I thought, we've got International Women's Day coming up on March the 8th. And I'm sure lots of you have got lots of issues about, just being a woman and getting through life, basically. And it's rather rainy and cold at the moment. I don't know whether this will warm us up or it won't. However, I'm going to just talk very briefly about some books that have helped me over the last maybe 2 or 3 years. May or may not be relevant to you. If they're not relevant to you, you don't have to keep watching. However, if you do just want to watch it, just see what I've got to say out of interest, please do so. You're more than welcome. We start with a little book on that old subject, the one that Marie Osmond describes as men on pause. In some ways, that's so accurate. Here we are. This is the first book, and it's Menopause by Dr. Louise Newson. I rather like the design of the cover. It's done like a Haynes manual. You may or may not be familiar with a Haynes manual. Basically, that Haynes manuals are generally car manuals, such as, the Vauxhall Viva from years ago, for example, and they've been going through time. I'm not sure they still do them now, but they certainly used to do a whole collection of them. And then they moved on to things like, different computer programs as Haynes manuals. And so the menopause one is following that pattern. I would say it's quite a basic book in terms of a lot of knowledge, but it's very easily laid out. The contents page is pretty easy to see, and it is broken down into sections. For example, a straightforward one of all about what is a menopause, which is a good place to start, obviously. And there's chapter 1. Menopause 101. And the thing about this is you can look through, if you've got a question, it will just answer it very basically, such as, how is my menopause diagnosed? And it does move on, and it covers other things such as HRT, what you need to know. Again, just very basic. But you may not have a lot of time. You may be able to just think, I'll just dip into that to see if it will help me to get some information, basically. There are also diagrams of how HRT works, etc. We come along further on. If you don't want to take HRT, or if you have a problem taking HRT, here we are with your alternative treatments and lifestyle changes. So all in all, this is a very good book. It deals with all the issues you may have with the menopause. Basically laid out, but tells you everything that you need to know. Now I mentioned, good segue here. I mentioned Marie Osmond briefly and how she describes the menopause as man on pause, and how when she was over here doing the tour with Donnie, she would get down to the fan and talk about having her own private summers, and actually it's quite accurate in many ways. Now, going back a long time ago, I don't know when this was, let me see when it was published, let me just have a little look. It's begun to get a bit brown actually in places. Let me see when the date is. Oh yes, it's way back. 2001 this one is published. It's written by Marie, along with Marcia Wilkie and Dr. Judith Moore. Marie Osmond, Behind the Smile, My Journey Out of Postpartum Depression. Now I knew this book was published in America, etc., and I knew it was available in England, and I was most astonished. I think it was Poundland or somewhere I went into, and there were some copies of this available for sale, and I bought one for myself and one for a friend. Now, I've never had postpartum depression, but I have, with both of my children, have had issues after they've been born, some of which can affect you in a similar fashion. Not got the time to go into the details of all of that, but I was astonished when I got this book and read it. I don't think there are some photos in it as well, actually, which, if you're a fan, you may like. There's pictures of her with her family and on the Donnie Marie show and touring with her family. So you do get some good photos. But I was, as I was saying, I was really surprised when I read this book. And I think I'm one of a lot of women who've said the same. It was just like Marie had taken the words out of my mouth, almost as if I'd written it myself. The way that she talks about just how tired she was and how everything was really, really difficult. And I can certainly still now relate to what she was talking about. It was so close to how I felt. My mother, over the years, has kept a journal, and when I say a journal, I mean a journal, not just a diary, and she writes all sorts of things in it. And when I was looking through to make a memory book for my daughter, I looked through all her journals to find pertinent bits of information because I didn't have time to journal it myself. I found a lot of information in her journal about myself and how I was and it took me a long time to get over having my daughter, let alone have another one. But a lot of it really reminded me of this book. And at the time I read this, as I was saying, I passed this on to my mother to read because I said to her, read this book because this is how I felt at the time. And she also said it was a very good book. So if you're wanting some help, even if it's not with this particular subject, or if you know someone who's got this problem at the moment and you want to understand how they feel and how you may be able to make a step forward in helping them, I would recommend Marie Osmond's book. It is a really, really excellent read, and certainly one that I would read again. There's certainly another one of Marie Osmond on my shelf. If I do another one of these, I'll drop it in for next year. So the other three books that I'm going to talk about, again, are still menopause related. This is the Menopause Manifesto, Dr. Jen Gunter, Own Your Health with Facts and Feminism. It's a different take on the menopause. Dr. Jen is American. A lot of the information in here is regarding the American market when it comes to pharmaceuticals and other ways of how they help American ladies, but a lot of it does apply to women here. I did find there are some areas that I just don't need to read, and I think if you look at the chapters at the beginning, you may well know which ones you want to read and which ones you don't need to read. There's two very comprehensive contents pages. There's one of them, and there's the second one of them, and the chapters are broken down into various things, such as again, menopausal hormone therapy, the messy history and where we are today, the cinematic universe of hormones, what MHT is right for you, and then taking charge of the change. So it's all in here. A lot of it is in great detail, some of which you may find difficult to understand. I know I certainly did, and I would have to go back and reread sections. Now, Dr. Jen has also written other books. There is a very well-known one and I found it very helpful. If you Google Dr. Jen, you should find some information that's very interesting, and also it will tell you what other books she's written, and I do recommend Dr. Jen. If you're in this country, you'll be familiar with the person I'm going to talk about next. If you're in a country abroad, you may or may not be familiar with this person, but I'm now going to talk about Davina McCall. Davina is a really, really great ambassador for the menopause. There are also other well-known women out there who are the same. There's another book that I've read fairly recently, and again, if I do another one next year, I'll try and drop that one in. That one is Mariella Frostrup, along with another lady. That is a very good book. If I do, as I say, I will drop hers in next year. This one, as I say, Davina is a great advocate for helping women to speak out, to get what they want. I mean, she does a lot of different programmes, especially Long Lost Family, which again, a lot of us like. And we know that she has empathy, and it really helps. I bought her book, Menopausing, which she wrote with Dr. Naomi Potter. I bought it from Sainsbury's. I couldn't really find it anywhere else, but I did find it in Sainsbury's. It is still in our local Sainsbury's, so it could well be in yours. I like this book an awful lot. It's done, I would say, like a modern magazine inside. But as I said in my Goodreads review, which I've just re-looked at, it's like she's sitting around the table with you, with a coffee, and she's laying everything out on the table for you. It's very colourful, and there's a picture at the front, Davina McCall and Dr. Naomi Potter. That's them. And I've written in the corner, page 172 and 173, general good advice anyway. So let's have a look at page 172. You'll have to excuse me, my eyes are a bit blurred at this moment in time. 172 and 173. Dr. Naomi, why antidepressants aren't usually the answer for menopause-related mood problems. And it says, how to get the right treatment first time. So why do antidepressants keep being offered to menopausal women? That's a page. As you can see from my description, it's laid out like a magazine, and it is very easy to read. And I've marked off a section about GPs have very little time to spend with a patient to unpick what is potentially a very complex network of symptoms, and it goes on a little bit, but it does tell you not in bullet points, but in very short points, how to get your point across to your GP. One of which is, and this is what I'm referring to, if you really want to try and you're getting nowhere, and this applies to any problem that you take to your doctor or your pharmacist. It probably applies if you work even. Be very clear about the symptoms you are experiencing. That really, really helps. State what treatment approaches you want to try. As I say, that information you can read and you can take to the doctor with any problem that you have. And that applies to men as well as women. Many men have trouble explaining how they feel or what their symptoms are. If you have this book, get it out, show them page 173 and say, this relates to the menopause and antidepressants, but this is how you can maybe get it through to your doctor. Very, very good information. And I like it because she's interviewed women in here, and some of the women agreed to their problem going in, and Davina replies to all of them, and it's in Davina's usual lovely chatty manner. But this is what I like about how it's laid out. For example, HRT, debunking the myths, lovely and colourful. So you can turn over and you can read people's problems and how they were dealt with, etc. Who can have transdermal HRT? I'm using transdermal, and I have to say I have found it probably the most helpful. As I say, it's broken down into lots of different sections, lots of lovely colours. Chapter 2, Knowledge is Power, Perimenopause and Menopause Explained. So if you think, I don't know if I'm at menopause level, I could be at perimenopause, but I'm not sure, this is your chapter. Basically, this book is bang up to date, and Davina is still working on this book as we speak, in a way, because she's continuing to follow up information. She's continuing to keep records of that information, because she says in a couple of years' time she'll probably have to do an update to this book. If you are on Instagram, Davina McCall is on there. There's also one or two menopause instas, but Davina is on there, and you can leave a comment, and sometimes you get a reply. I don't know, how can I say it? She's also on Twitter. She is actually very good and very active. She does like your tweets, and she does reply to your tweets. So again, that's a way of following Davina. I can't thank her enough for this book. And you can guarantee currently it's bang up to date. The last one, I was in the library. I always advocate for libraries. Having worked in them, I still use them. I don't necessarily borrow fiction. I do on occasion, but I went in to look for specific books, and I came across this one. It was brand new and it was on a display, and I just really liked how it looked. It looks like a lovely magazine on the front, and it's called Deliciously Healthy Menopause, and it's by Severine Menem. Food and recipes for optimal health throughout the perimenopause and menopause. I just love the colour of it, the pale green. It's a nice restful colour, and it looks very welcoming. I've got a piece of paper in the front here. I've marked off a page. It's a set of pages, Optimising Nutrition for the Menopause. Now, in the other books, there are sections on nutrition. I personally found this book helpful because it says reviewing your diet for the menopause, and it's laid out very well. I actually found this book more helpful than a lot of other books and or magazines. It basically listed foods that I knew I can tolerate, to help me out with my menopause, and sometimes it slacks off and I have to remind myself what were those foods. Because of having my irritable bowel syndrome, which again a lot of people have, it does vary. There are in fact 3 types of irritable bowel syndrome. Years ago they just treated it in one way, and that way was not the way for me. Having read books recently, which I can cover if anybody wants me to do that, please tell me. I'll find them out of the library and I will borrow them for next year and put them in. It's a bit of a digression, but in here it lists foods that I know I can tolerate that are actually good for me to get me through the menopause, such as cucumber and tomatoes and strawberries, etc. So I found this book very helpful. And at the back it's got a lot of recipes, something I keep meaning to try, but I'm not quite sure how it would go down with me. I may have to adjust it. But for example, it recommends granola. And there are lots of lovely pictures. Scallops with sweet potato puree, for example. And all the pictures, and obviously they're done to make them look nice, but they do look lovely. For example, the lamb tagine. You may not eat meat, but the way the photograph is taken looks lovely. So I do recommend this book also. And that, as I say, is that. I hope that you find it interesting. I hope you like my videos. If you haven't seen any of them and you'd like to investigate the ones I've done previously, please say so. My next one, maybe my last one for the year, but my next one is for World Book Night, which is a different one to World Book Day, and that is always on the 23rd of April. So my next book vlog will be available for then. I may or may not get some more in through the year. I'm really not sure. But that's all for now.